Some places hang on to their secrets, and my great-uncle's cabin was holding one that wanted me out. My name is Leo. I'm 30. After burning out at my city job, I retreated to a tiny dot on the map called Hollow Creek, Tennessee. With nowhere else to turn, I took up residence in my great-uncle's old cabin. He'd passed on a while back, leaving the property to my family. It's located about 15 minutes from town, a small house on a patch of land completely encircled by deep woods. The silence was the point, or so I thought. The cabin itself was rustic, floorboards that groaned with every step, doors that resisted opening, a place that seemed to hold a permanent chill no matter the temperature. But it cost me nothing, and I had no better choices. The first week was uneventful. I settled in, cleaned up the dust of years. I'd end my days on the porch nursing a cold drink. It was serene. No city noise, just the whisper of wind in the pines and the call of a distant bird. Then the sounds began. I first registered it on the 8th night. I'd just turned in, sometime past midnight. I was drifting into sleep when I detected a low humming from outside. It wasn't any tune I knew, just a quiet, disjointed melody, slightly flat. It sounded like it was coming from someone walking deep in the forest behind the cabin, humming to themselves. It was unnerving, but I dismissed it as a local hunter or maybe a neighbor who'd had a few too many. The next night, it returned. Same time, same strange melody, only this time it felt closer. I climbed out of bed, flipped on the back porch light, but the yard was empty. I stepped outside with a heavy flashlight, scanning the perimeter. Nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt, no sound of anyone retreating. Just the humming that seemed to dissolve back into the trees. I tried to push it from my mind. For a few nights, I would just pull the covers tighter and try to force myself to sleep through it, but the humming always started around 3:03 a.m. I know how specific that time is, but I checked my clock. It was punctual. Disillusion. I started to suspect someone was deliberately trying to mess with me, someone aware I was alone way out here. Was this some local prank? After a few more nights, I finally contacted the sheriff's department. An older officer, Sheriff Brody, came to the property. He'd been on the force for decades. When I described what I was hearing, his friendly demeanor vanished. He became very still. He told me, "Your great-uncle used to phone us about the exact same thing. Said a man was humming on his land late at night, always in the fall. We never once saw anything. I thought he was just getting on in years, but now you're hearing it too." That revelation sent a chill down my spine. I never knew my great-uncle had gone through this. Sheriff Brody advised me to keep everything locked and not go out after sundown. I was already doing that. I began obsessively checking the windows. I even wedged a chair under the front doorknob, but the humming just kept getting nearer each night. One evening, I heard it from behind the old tool shed. It was clearer than before, as if the person was standing just out of sight. I took my flashlight and peered through the kitchen blinds. I saw no one, but I wouldn't dare step outside. The following night, I heard it from the front porch, right beside the door. 3 drawn-out hummed notes, followed by total silence. The night after that, it came from beneath the house. I swear it felt like someone was in the crawl space, the sound vibrating up through the floor. I got zero sleep. The next morning, I started searching the dusty attic, hoping to find something, anything, my great-uncle might have left. I found an old trunk with his journals inside. He wrote about the humming. He said it occurred every autumn for almost 15 years. He never knew who it was, but he believed someone was watching the cabin. He wrote about sitting by the door with his hunting rifle just waiting. He noted it only ever started after his wife, my great-aunt, passed away, when he was living by himself. I called Sheriff Brody again. He drove over, read the journal entries, and looked visibly troubled. He told me to be extremely cautious. He said, "Don't you open that door for anyone you don't know." That night, I stayed awake. I sat in the living room with a heavy fireplace poker on my lap. I waited. At 3:03 a.m. on the dot, the humming began again. But this time it wasn't outside. It was coming from the dark hallway inside my house. I was paralyzed. The hall light was off. I could hear the faint sound moving closer. I shakily got to my feet, holding the poker, and I croaked, "Who is in my house?" The humming ceased. I lunged for the light switch and flipped it on. The hallway was empty. There was nobody there. I didn't sleep at all after that. 2 nights passed in complete silence, and I heard nothing. I was becoming physically ill from the stress. I didn't know who this was or why they had singled out my family's property, but I knew it was a person. I don't buy into paranormal explanations. This was flesh and blood. After that terrifying night, things were quiet for 2 days. No sounds, no humming, nothing. I started to hope that it was finally finished. On the 3rd night, I went to bed around midnight. I didn't keep vigil this time, but I left the hallway light on. At exactly 3:03 a.m., a new noise woke me. It wasn't humming. It was tapping. 3 slow, methodical taps. They came from inside the house, from the door to the basement. Then, silence. I laid in bed, frozen, just listening. A minute passed. Then I heard a new sound. A floorboard creaked in the hall. Then again. Someone was walking toward my room. The hallway light clicked off. I grabbed the poker from beside my bed, my heart hammering. I stepped out of my bedroom. The hall was pitch black, but at the far end, I could just make out a shape. A tall person, dressed in dark clothes, with a shockingly pale face. They were standing perfectly still, watching me. I raised the poker, but my arms were trembling uncontrollably. I tried to yell, but my throat was closed. I managed a shaky whisper, "Get out." In the darkness, I saw the person slowly lift a foot and begin to turn away. I shouted, "Stop!" And in that instant, they bolted down the hallway and out of my view. I heard their heavy boots thudding across the porch and out the front door into the night. I ran after them and screamed into the darkness, "Don't you ever come back!" The silence that followed was louder than any scream. I scrambled to lock the door, grabbed my keys, and got in my truck. I spent that night in the truck in the town's only gas station parking lot. The next morning, Sheriff Brody met me back at the cabin, and we found the front door was unlocked again. That confirmed it. Whoever it was had a key. Nothing was stolen or broken, but Brody strongly advised I get the locks changed. Off the record, he suggested I just leave that old place for good, because someone in those woods clearly had a problem with my family living there. I drove straight to the hardware store and replaced every lock that same day. After that, I went to stay with my parents in another state for a good while. I left it to my father to handle selling the cabin. We took what had sentimental value, and the rest was sold or left behind. My dad, of course, omitted the detail that some phantom has been terrorizing the property for what seems like decades. How they got a key, who they are, why my great-uncle never told anyone, I have no idea. It all bothers me immensely. I think it was just some deranged person living out there in the forest. I eventually relocated to a busy city. That experience left me far too disturbed to ever live in an isolated place again. I'm 20 now, and I live in a big city, but the first 8 years of my life were spent deep in the country. To some, it may sound strange that I was allowed to wander our small hamlet without parental supervision at such a young age. The area wasn't large, and the entire population was barely 100 people. Everyone knew everyone else, to the point where my friends and I could identify cars just by their license plates and who they belonged to. It was a sweltering summer afternoon. My friend, who I'll call Sam, and I were desperate for a cold soda. Back then, they were cheap at the little general store, but we were a few coins short of buying 2 cans. As luck would have it, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable called to us from her porch. She explained she was making a special tea for an upcoming town potluck. The problem was, she'd run out of a specific flower, which she called moon petals. She told us if we could fill 2 small bags with them, she would buy us all the soda we wanted. Sam and I thought this was a fantastic deal since I was hesitant to ask my parents for money. So later that day, we set off on our quest. The sun was beating down and our shirts were damp with sweat. We searched for these specific white flowers, but for all our efforts we had barely covered the bottom of one bag. We were both getting frustrated, knowing there was little chance we could gather enough before dusk. Still, we pressed on, wandering farther and hoping for a miracle, maybe a whole field of them. Suddenly, two men approached us, seemingly from nowhere. They were tall, maybe not to an adult, but to our 7-year-old eyes, they were giants. What I found most odd was that they were dressed in heavy, worn-out farm jackets and dusty boots, despite the intense heat. Neither looked much older than a teenager, though it was hard to see their faces clearly under the shadows of their hats. They spoke to us in a soft, almost childish voice, choosing their words in a way that seemed designed to put us at ease. "Are you two out here all alone?" Sam glanced at me. He looked uneasy and made a subtle motion with his hand that I now know meant we should leave. Unfortunately, I was never good at reading those signals, so I didn't grasp what he was trying to tell me. I turned my attention back to the two men and said cheerfully, "Yes, we're looking for moon petal flowers." Then I asked if they knew where we could find a lot of them. "We've been searching all day and we're so tired," I added. I'm not entirely sure, but I have a brief memory of one of them smiling when he heard what we were seeking. One of them knelt beside me and patted my hair. Sam immediately stepped closer, pulling me back by my arm when he saw the man touch me. His face was serious, almost panicked, and he asked them, "Who are your folks?" You see, where I grew up, that question was how you identified someone. With so few families, asking about your parents was a way to place your entire family line. Sam was born in the country and knew the local families far better than I did. I assume he was scared because he didn't recognize these men at all, and the fact they were talking to two small children with no one else around, even touching me, set off alarm bells for him. Just as he worried, they sidestepped the question, seeming to focus all their attention on me. "Actually," one said, "I know of a hidden grove with tons of them. You see that old mill over there? We come from just beyond it. If you want, we can show you the spot and help you fill those bags right up." Of course, we knew the old mill. Sam and I and the other kids used to play near it. It was a local landmark. But still, I had never heard of any grove of special flowers there. The area around it was mostly cornfields, grapevines, and a few patches of melons. Again, I was a naive kid, and all these warning signs went right over my head. I nodded enthusiastically, tugging Sam's arm to get him to come with me. The men seemed pleased and started to lead us down a path. We walked farther and farther from the hamlet, and I could feel my friend's hand starting to tremble in mine. At that moment, I felt a sudden cold feeling as I realized the familiar houses of the village were no longer visible. The woods around the mill were right ahead, and I saw no sign of any flower grove. I tried asking the men where we were headed, but they just gave vague replies like, "You'll see soon," or "Just a little more patience." I started to sweat and slowed my pace slightly. Panic began to rise in my chest as I understood that something was very wrong. But for some reason, I felt like I couldn't just stop walking. I had a definite feeling that if either of us tried to turn back, something terrible would happen. Then, very discreetly, Sam leaned close to my ear, and I still get chills thinking about how clearly I remember it. He whispered as quietly as he could, "There's something wrong with them. Run." That was the last thing I processed before Sam started sprinting downhill like his life was on the line, his hand locked with mine. I ran like I never had before, and I'm pretty sure my life did depend on it. I could hear the men cursing behind us, and soon they were chasing us. I started sobbing with fear but didn't dare stop. I'm certain I wasn't even breathing. I have no idea how I managed to run for what felt like over a mile back to the village without stopping. Mrs. Gable, the woman who sent us on the errand, saw us arrive covered in tears and sweat. Our faces were white, as if every drop of blood had drained from them. At some point during our flight, the men must have given up the chase. She calmly brought us inside and gave us some chocolate to help us calm down. She asked what happened, and Sam told her the story, since I was too shaken to speak. As soon as he finished, the woman gave us a stern, worried look and scolded us for being so foolish. Well, she scolded Sam, who lied and said I didn't want to go, and that he had insisted on trusting the men. After that, he was grounded for a month. While I needed a long time to get over that scare, I never learned who those men were or what they wanted with us. Looking back on it now as an adult, I have a very good guess, and it doesn't make me feel any better. While we were running, I could have easily tripped and fallen on that steep hill. If it wasn't for Sam, I don't want to think about what they would have done. My parents worked constantly when I was young. Both of them held down 2 jobs to provide for me and my older brother, Alex. Their work kept a roof over our heads, but it meant they were gone for most of the day. So they found a babysitter for us through a website. She was a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, named Jenna. For 4 or 5 months, Jenna came over every weekday. Me being 7 and Alex being 8, we adored having her around. She was kind, energetic, and fun to play with, which was a huge improvement over a tired, grumpy older sitter. Alex and I took our classes online because the school schedule was too difficult for our parents to manage. Jenna helped with that too. When summer arrived, my parents told Jenna she should take a break. They wanted her to have a nice vacation, especially after everything she'd done for us. But that also left us without a sitter for the summer. My parents didn't want to go through the whole process of finding another trustworthy person, so they decided to take Alex and me to our grandparents' house. They lived in rural Maine, quite a distance from our home in Massachusetts, but it seemed worth the drive since we'd be there all summer. That weekend, we began our trip. The drive was scenic, but to a small kid, it was an endless, nauseating ordeal. We finally arrived at their house after what felt like an eternity. It was a medium-sized farmhouse in the center of a large, open field with woods in the back. Off to one side was a big red barn with an area for animals like cows, goats, and chickens. We exchanged our hellos, and my grandpa immediately wanted to give Alex and me a tour of the property. My parents went inside to talk with my grandma while she prepared dinner. The evening was wonderful. We caught up with our grandparents and played with their dog, a golden retriever named Cora. When it was bedtime, my brother and I shared a room with a bunk bed and a small TV. The room next to ours was where my parents slept. Mom and Dad fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted from the long drive and needing to be back home for work on Monday. Alex and I stayed up a little later watching cartoons. Eventually, we drifted off with the TV still on. Around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of heavy footsteps right outside my window. I couldn't see anything because the blinds were closed. The footsteps didn't wake Alex over the sound of the TV, but I could hear them clearly. Then I heard a strange scraping noise against the window screen, followed by a low grunt. Someone was trying to get in. I ran to my parents' room to wake them. They didn't really believe me, thinking it was just my imagination, but when they went to look, there was nothing there. So, they just wrote it off as an animal. We were out in the country after all, and maybe my kid brain had exaggerated the sound. I fell back asleep after a few minutes of lying there. In the morning, I woke to the amazing smell of my grandma's pancakes as my parents were getting ready to leave. We all ate breakfast together before my parents headed out. Once they left, my grandpa took Alex and me to feed the animals, taking Cora for a walk with us. I asked to hold Cora's leash, so my grandpa gave it to me, telling me to hold on tight. As we walked down the trail, I found myself having to tug Cora along every few seconds. When I finally looked to see why she kept stopping, I saw her staring intently at something. She was staring into the woods. I was a little scared to look, but when I did, I saw a dark figure standing there watching us. Though it was just a silhouette, I could feel its gaze on us. It was partially hidden behind a tree, with its hands on the bark as if peeking around, but with its whole body. I turned to tell my grandpa, but he and Alex were already about 15 feet ahead. I ran to catch up, pulling Cora with me. When I told my grandpa about the man in the woods, he vanished. It was like he was never there. I thought I would have been able to see him run, but where did he go? My grandpa had heard about what happened the night before, so he knew I wasn't just making things up. I could see the concern on his face, but he just told me it was okay, that it was probably a deer in the distance that I scared off when I ran. After we fed the animals, we returned to the house. We spent the rest of the day watching movies and playing in the sprinklers. That night, my grandma made another fantastic dinner. There was so much food that I was exhausted after eating. I took a quick bath and went to our room. We watched cartoons for a while and fell asleep. Around 1 a.m., I was awakened by someone humming outside the window. It was a simple nursery rhyme, the one playing on the TV show that was on. Alex, being a heavy sleeper, didn't stir. And as I said, the blinds were shut, so I couldn't see anything. But I was sure now it had to be a person. At first, I thought maybe it was my grandpa outside having a smoke, and he started humming because he heard the show. It was a silly thought, but I was a kid. I called out, "Grandpa?" The humming stopped. After 30 seconds of silence, I heard a voice whisper, "Hey, it's Grandpa. Come on out, kiddo. I want to show you something neat." I put on my shoes and went outside. There were no lights on, but I remember how brilliant the stars looked. I walked over to my window and saw my grandpa standing there. He held out his hand for me to take it. I took it, and he began leading me toward the barn. I tried talking to him, asking where we were going, but he didn't answer. I started to get a bad feeling. Why would my grandpa be out here at 1 a.m.? Why was he wearing a sweatshirt with the hood up on a warm night? Then I looked down at the hand holding mine and really paid attention. I realized it wasn't my grandpa's hand. It was the hand of a much younger man. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. I didn't want him to know I was onto him, so I stayed quiet, even as my heart pounded. Then I looked behind him and saw a long metal handle sticking out from the back of his jeans. That's when I truly panicked inside. Suddenly, I heard my real grandpa's voice call my name from the house. I didn't answer, but the man holding my hand turned his head toward the sound. In that split second of distraction, I ripped my hand free and scrambled backwards. The man froze for a moment, then bolted toward the woods. I ran for the house, screaming for help. By the time I got inside, my grandpa was there with his arms open, and my grandma was on the phone with the police. The cops arrived soon after and searched the area. They found the man hiding in a ditch near the property line. In that ditch was some equipment he'd stolen from the barn. And most terrifying of all, they confirmed he had a tire iron tucked into his pants. After investigating, they discovered the lock on my grandpa's shed had been broken. Inside the shed were many tools that could have been used for terrible things. A few days later, my grandpa learned the man was the ex-boyfriend of our old babysitter, Jenna. His name was Mark. Mark admitted he had been stalking us and had planned to abduct me that night. He figured it was easier to take a little girl, so he focused on me. He said he wanted me because he knew Jenna cared about me deeply, and if he threatened to harm me, he could make Jenna do whatever he wanted. Mark claimed he wanted to use me to get back together with Jenna and start a new life with her. He insisted he was never going to actually hurt me. After this whole ordeal, our parents picked Alex and me up a week later and began looking for jobs that would let them be home with us more. They also let Jenna go, which was understandable. If these stories give you chills, please hit that like button. And for more unsettling tales, subscribe to Winds of Thought. I am so grateful the police station was close to my grandparents' house. But most of all, I'm thankful my grandpa woke up that night. Even now, it gives me chills to imagine what could have happened.